In the last episode, we journeyed into Eden and witnessed humanity receiving a terrible, beautiful gift, the gift of moral consciousness. The burden of knowing right from wrong. In that moment, humanity came of age. But what happens when that newfound knowledge is turned inward? When the very first choice after innocence is not righteousness, but rage? There is a moment in every story where the echoes begin. Not a whisper. Not a fading memory. A cry. A primal roar, from the ground itself, that still resonates through the ages. In the nascent world outside Eden, that moment came when one brother's hand rose against another. But here is what we rarely ask: what was the true nature of that first sin? And what did the earth itself truly witness? If you were to open a standard Western Bible, you would find Genesis, chapter 4, beginning with the birth of two sons to Adam and Eve, outside the gates of Eden. Cain, a tiller of the ground, and Abel, a keeper of sheep. And then, the story of their offerings. Cain brought of the fruit of the ground a sacrifice to the Lord. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. In the Western tradition, this often sparks questions of divine favoritism. Was God unfair? Was Cain's offering simply of lesser quality, a paltry gift compared to Abel's best? We might perceive divine judgment as arbitrary. But that is not how the scroll reads. Not in the original Hebrew, and not in the Ge'ez. The text says Cain's countenance fell. In Hebrew, this is vayipelu panav, literally his face fell. This is more than mere sadness or disappointment, it speaks of a profound inner turmoil, a shift in his very being. A darkened spirit, consumed by envy and pride. And then, God speaks to Cain. A pivotal, yet often overlooked, divine intervention. God says, "Why are your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it." Genesis 4, verses 6 to 7. This is the great mystery. The first humans, having gained the gift of discernment, are now faced with their first profound moral test. The serpent in Eden offered a choice. Here, God offers Cain a direct warning, and another choice. It is a moment of profound agency. In Hebrew, the word for sin here is charot. While it means sin in the general sense, it also specifically refers to a sin offering or purification offering in the priestly texts. This duality suggests something profound: sin is not just an act, but a state or a force that can be acknowledged and atoned for. And the phrase crouching at the door, rov la pita, paints a vivid image. It is not just an abstract concept of sin, but a wild beast, a predator, waiting to pounce. It desires, teshuka, to master Cain, to overpower his will. But God tells him, with absolute clarity, you must rule over it, viatar timshulbo. In the Ethiopian tradition, in the Ge'ez language, the word for sin, ayat, while related to the Hebrew, carries an intense weight of transgression, a deviation from the divine path. And the concept of ruling over it, tlbu, is a direct challenge to the human will. It emphasizes agency. Cain is not merely tempted, he is explicitly told he has the power, the discernment, to overcome this lurking force. This is the immediate consequence of the knowledge of good and evil that episode 2 explored. Cain knows what is good, to do well, to have his offering accepted, and what is evil, to succumb to the dark force, the crouching beast at his door. God is not punishing him for feeling angry, God is warning him about the choice he is about to make with that anger. But Cain did not rule over it. He allowed the crouched beast to spring. He spoke to Abel, his brother. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. The first murder. The first blood spilled by human hands. A direct consequence of rejecting the moral burden of failing to discern good from evil within himself. And then, the voice of God again. "Where is Abel your brother?" Cain's reply is infamous, "I do not know, am I my brother's keeper?" A lie? A denial. A refusal of responsibility that echoes down through every act of violence and indifference since. A chilling rejection of human solidarity. But God knows. And then comes the most haunting line, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." Genesis 4, verse 10. Think of this imagery. Blood, dam, in Hebrew, dam, in Ge'ez, the very essence of life, now spilled, absorbed by the ground, Adamah, in Hebrew, Maida, in Ge'ez. The earth, the source of life, now drinks of death. In the Western tradition, blood crying out is often seen as a metaphor for vengeance, a spiritual demand for justice that God himself hears. And it is that. But in the Ge'ez tradition, the nuance runs deeper. The word for, to cry out, yak, in Hebrew, yehu, in Ge'ez, implies not just a sound, but a testimony. The ground has absorbed not just the physical blood, but the spiritual weight of a life unjustly taken. It screams not merely for retribution, but for cosmic order to be restored. The earth itself is defiled, rendered unclean, by this act. It becomes a witness, bearing silent but undeniable testament to the crime. Remember episode 2, the expulsion from Eden was a gradual separation, a spiritual death. Now, Cain's act plunges humanity deeper into that descent. The ground, which was to provide sustenance, now bears witness against him. The very source of life, the ground, is now inextricably linked to the shedding of life. The world is not just changed by the act of eating fruit, it is irrevocably scarred by the act of murder. And the consequence arrives. God says to Cain, "Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." This is not merely a banishment, it is a profound separation from his own calling. Cain, the tiller of the ground, is rejected by the very earth he was meant to cultivate. His livelihood becomes his torment. His purpose is fractured. Cain recognizes the severity, "My punishment is greater than I can bear." He fears that anyone who finds him will kill him. But God, even in judgment, offers a layer of protection. Therefore whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should attack him. The mark of Cain. In the West, it is often seen as a brand of shame. An indelible sign of his sin. A visible scarlet letter for his transgression. But in the Hebrew, the word for mark, ot, is the same word used for a sign or token. It's a broader term. It could be a warning, a physical alteration, or even a symbol of a covenant, like the rainbow. In Cain's case, it serves a dual purpose. A constant reminder of his transgression, yes, but also a divine promise of protection. He is not to be killed. His suffering is to live with the consequences of his actions. To wander. To bear the weight of his choice. Rather than finding escape in death. In the Tewahedo tradition, this mark represents not just punishment, but the perpetual state of the human condition after such a profound transgression. Separation from the unblemished earth, and a life lived under the shadow of one's deeds. It is a symbol of the spiritual exile that began in Eden. Deepened by fratricide. Cain is forced to confront his choice, not escape it through oblivion. His wandering is a living testament to the blood crying out. The story of Cain and Abel is the immediate, tragic demonstration of humanity's newfound moral consciousness. In episode 2, we learned that the gift of discernment allowed humans to become like God. To judge, to choose. Cain was given the ultimate opportunity to wield this gift righteously. God warned him that sin was a beast he could master. Cain chose not to. He chose rage, jealousy, and ultimately, murder. Through the Ge'ez lens, Abel's accepted sacrifice was not merely about the firstborn or fat portions, but about the heart. Lab. And the intention behind the offering. It was a recognition of dependence, of gratitude, of offering the best, a discernment of what was truly due to the divine. Cain, perhaps, offered from obligation, from what he could produce himself, without the same depth of spirit. He failed to master the beast of pride and envy, and in doing so, he failed the first moral test of post-Eden humanity. The cry of blood then is not just a call for justice, but a lament for the lost potential. The disruption of the sacred order. The first deep scar on the fabric of creation, caused by the very beings given the gift of moral agency. This is why the story of Cain and Abel is so central. It reveals that the knowledge of good and evil is a double-edged sword. It allows for righteousness, but it also opens the door to unimaginable wickedness. It places the burden of ethical choice squarely on human shoulders and shows the devastating consequences of choosing poorly. Cain goes on from the presence of the Lord, settling in the land of Nod, east of Eden. He builds the first city. His lineage thrives, creating tools of bronze and iron and musical instruments. Progress and innovation, yes, but often intertwined with violence and defiance, as seen in his descendant Lamech, who boasts of killing a man for wounding him, claiming 77-fold vengeance, a dark echo of God's protective words for Cain. This is the enduring legacy of Cain. Humanity's capacity for ingenuity, culture, and progress, often inextricably linked with its capacity for violence, separation, and sin. The urban sprawl, the tools of war, the laments of music. All have roots in this exiled, marked lineage. But the story does not end there. Adam and Eve have another son, Seth. For God has appointed for me another seed instead of Abel. Because Cain killed him, says Eve. This other seed, Zerah. In Hebrew, Zah. In gay years, is crucial. It's a promise. A new beginning, a replacement, a lineage through which the sacred connection can be re-established. From Seth's line, humanity begins to call upon the name of the Lord. It is through this lineage that the thread of redemption, the possibility of a return from exile, is maintained. The blood of Abel cried out. And that cry resonated, not only as a demand for justice but as a profound warning. The world, now shaped by human choices, was quickly descending into a morass of violence and defiance. The burden of moral freedom, taken freely in Eden, and tragically abused by Cain, was about to lead humanity to the brink. This is what the Tewahedo tradition understands: the first murder wasn't just an isolated act. It was the first ripple in a torrent. It showed the true cost of moral freedom when exercised without righteousness. It foreshadowed a world where the lines between good and evil would blur, and the cry of innocent blood would become a chorus, leading to a profound disruption of the divine order. We have followed the cry of blood through the ages, through the eyes of the keepers of the mountains. Join us next time, as we unroll the next scroll. The world outside Eden falls deeper into chaos, and the lines blur between the divine and the human, leading to a mysterious, ancient race, the Nephilim. Peace be with you. Next time on the Ancient Order. Dominion of the Fallen, the Rise of the Nephilim. Genesis 6, Through Gayer's Eyes.